You know what, Wisconsin, we have a big responsibility. We've got a big opportunity. The whole country's watching Wisconsin. And we Wisconsinites, on June the 5th, on Tuesday, in November, we Wisconsinites can take back our state, can reapply our founding principles and declare we believe in the American idea, and we Wisconsinites can help decide the fate of this country. And then we will look back at this moment and we'll know that this was the time, the juncture in history where, yes, this generation stood up to do what was right, to protect the next generation, just like our parents did for us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Governor Mitt Romney.
You guys are just fabulous. I really appreciate your being here. And I know you're not just here for me, you're here for a lot of folks. And I particularly appreciate the extraordinary introduction of your Congressman, Paul Ryan. What a leader in our party. What a conservative, brilliant man. And I very much appreciate his support and endorsement. And appreciate the fact that you're focusing on doing what's got to be done, which is getting our country back on track and replacing Barack Obama. That's a job we got to get done soon. I thought I'd take just a moment and talk to you about the process, the experience that I've had of getting a chance to go across the country and meet fellow Americans. I had not expected, as a young man, that I'd have the chance to do what I'm doing. I thought I'd be in business like my dad was all my life, and yet he later in life decided to run for office, and the opportunity opened up for me after the Olympics in 2002 to go back to my state that was in trouble and try and get it back on track. And from an experience there, I now find myself having the chance to go across the country and meeting Americans. I meet the people that you don't see on the news. The people you see on the news have typically done something very unusual. Generally not a good thing that gets them on the news. I get to meet people who aren't doing something unusual. I get to meet everyday Americans who don't make the news, but who nonetheless inspire. And I come away from this process more enthusiastic and more optimistic about the future of our country, because I've seen the American people firsthand. And I was in Appleton yesterday. I met a husband and wife in their 60s. They had expected to be retiring about now. They'd purchased a couple of duplexes as rental properties to be the income for their retirement. But the home values have collapsed, some 30% under the president. And so they're not able to retire. Both of them working, one working at a company that only has $1 million in revenue, and he's a salesman. So, you know, how many salespeople you can afford in a small company is something that he has to wonder about, I'm sure. And his wife works at a department store selling perfumes and so forth, both working hard, but both committed to making sure that their future is bright. They have a son that's out of work, but they're helping him. Tough times, but people who are not discouraged, not despondent, have confidence in themselves. I met another woman yesterday from Appleton. She was born outside this country, came here, and has 2 children. Sons in their 30s, one of whom is disabled, and she works as a translator. She's able to put manuals from English into Spanish, and loves her work, provides for herself and for her family. A remarkable story of entrepreneurialism and can-do American spirit. I was at St. Louis. Guy was working for the city of St. Louis, working in their landscaping division. Decided to start his own landscaping business. He's got some 200 people working for him now. His only worry, he says, is gasoline price. Driving around from home to home with all those trucks, not easy to do with the price of gasoline. And then he hears that the EPA is thinking about regulating the carbon emissions from lawnmowers. And he says, how could I possibly afford replacing all of my lawn mowing equipment and the snow blowers? Of course, not a lot of snow this year. He didn't have to get them out very often. Another fellow I met in San Antonio, Texas, just 2 days ago. C.C. Civ came to this country from Cambodia, and in 1976 went to work in a restaurant, then worked as a taxi driver in New York City, decided to save money and apply to business school, got an MBA, and then started working in government-related positions, ultimately became part of the George Herbert Walker Bush White House team, and was appointed ambassador to the United Nations. 14 years after coming to this country, he said, "You can't imagine the emotion that I had as I stood before the United Nations and said that I come representing the people of the United States of America." There is no other nation on earth like America. I as a business guy, used to travel around and see different countries. I always was proud of the fact that didn't have to say anything about it. I just knew inside I had a special gift no one else had. I was American. No question in my heart that it was special to be American. And I wondered why it is that as I tell you these stories and I meet people across the country, why we're such an exceptional land with such extraordinary people who've done more to lift people around the world out of poverty than any other nation. Free enterprise, as we promoted it, right around the world. And of course, the greatest contribution, perhaps, to the world was not just free enterprise and the concept of freedom itself that is spread around the world, but the sacrifice of our sons and daughters over many wars to free people from tyranny and despotism. This is a remarkable land. And I wonder, as I think about those things, if it does not all go back to the very foundation of America. That when the founders of the country crafted the words of the Declaration of Independence, I believe they chose in those few words and in those principles a vision for America that would make us unique and exceptional in the world, would make us not only the freest nation in the world, but the most prosperous and the greatest. And you know those words. They concluded by brilliance or inspiration, and I think both, that we were endowed by our Creator with our rights, not by the king, not by the state, but by our Creator. And among those rights would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those rights and those associated with them, I believe, are what made America what we are. And today those rights are under attack by this administration, which is one more reason we got to replace this administration. This is an election not just about a person, not even about a party. It's about a vision of America. We're going to choose the destiny of America, just like the founders chose it a couple hundred years ago. We're going to choose what America is going to be like over the next hundreds of years in this election. I think it's coming down to that. I think this is an inflection point in American history, where we're going to decide if we're going to be committed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or whether we're going to take a different course. President Obama believes in a government-centered society. He doesn't call it that precisely, but you listen to his speeches, there's no question. He believes government guiding our lives will do a better job in doing so than individuals pursuing their own freedoms in their own ways. And you see that item after item. Think about the economy, for instance. Do you realize that that government at all levels today consumes 37% of the total economy? 37%. And if we allow Obamacare to stand, it will consume directly almost half of the total American economy. And then when you consider the kinds of intrusions of powers they're putting into industries like the automotive industry and the financial services industry and the energy industry, they will control either directly or indirectly over half of the American economy. And we'll have to stop and ask ourselves, are we still a free economy? Do we still believe in free enterprise? Or have we become what some of the most unsuccessful nations in history have become? A government-dominated economy. This is a choice we're going to have to make. And so the president, because he believes in this government-dominated society, continues to build government larger and larger and create more and more dependence upon government. This is a time when he's willing to put together trillion-dollar deficits. Can you imagine having that as your legacy? Being the first president in history with a $1 trillion deficit, and he's done it every year. If I'm president, we're going to cut federal spending, we're going to cap federal spending, and we're finally going to have a balanced budget amendment. His government-centered society is crushing economic freedom. Now you understand the impact of regulations, for instance, and how regulations can make it harder for small businesses to grow. Let me mention another one, taxation. Now we all know high taxes make it harder for people to make ends meet and kill jobs. But let me just give a little granularity to that. The president wants to raise the marginal tax rate from 35% to 40%. Now, you think about that for a moment. Do you know how many people in America work in businesses that are taxed at the individual level, at that marginal tax level, not at the corporate tax rate? 54% of American workers work in businesses that are taxed as individuals. And so as you raise that tax rate from 35% to 40%, you kill jobs. That's what he's doing. He'd rather have money for the American people and from small business than encourage free enterprise and economic vitality. And then there's some other ideas he has. One of the special ideas in Obamacare is to apply a 2.3% tax on sales of businesses. So if you're in the healthcare sector and you want to get started with a new idea of some kind, you get a little unprofitable business, you're going to get taxed even as you're unprofitable. I was with one company called Nuvasiv that was founded by a Russian immigrant. They build products to go into back surgeries. And they now have $600 million in revenue, employ about 1,300 people. He said they'd have to lay off 200 people to pay this new Obamacare tax on their business. And then you heard the vice president. Did you hear about him yesterday? Talking about, yeah, he's got a lot of things to say, doesn't he? Anytime you're looking for something to go after in a political sense, just listen to the vice president. He's got plenty of material for us. Yesterday he was talking about a new global tax. We're going to tax companies all over that do business all over the world. And so if you're here as an American company, well, we're going to tax you for your enterprises wherever they are in the world. Doesn't he understand that just means that our enterprises will leave and go somewhere else? They just kill economic freedom. They make it harder and harder for our economy to grow and put people back to work. And the proof is in the pudding. Look at this recovery, the most tepid, weakest recovery we've seen since Hoover. This is a time for freedom, for economic freedom. It is not a time for a government-dominated society or economy. You know, I think the American worker should be able to join a union and form a union if they'd like to. But I don't think a union should be forced on them, and I don't think that unions should be able to take money out of a worker's paycheck and give it to a politician that the union boss wants to give it to. You know as well that religious freedom is under attack. Again, under Obamacare. They want to dictate to the Catholic Church that the employees of the Catholic Church have to be provided by the Catholic Church with health insurance that gives them free contraceptives and free sterilization treatment and morning after pills, despite the fact that this violates the conscience of the Catholic Church. If I'm president of the United States, this great choice we have will make sure that in my case, I will restore and protect religious freedom. We are one nation under God, and that must be maintained. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life was the first of those. I want to protect the sanctity of human life. If I'm president of the United States, unlike this president, I will restore the Mexico City policy. I will defund Planned Parenthood, and I'll take our money out of the United Nations Population Fund. I mentioned to you what it was like being able to travel abroad and standing a little taller, a little straighter, because I knew I had a gift that others didn't have, and that was I was American. Something we all share. I think what means a different thing to each of us, but it means something important to all of us. People around the world, without question, understood that it was special to be American. We knew, without question, it was extraordinary, exceptional, and special to be American. Our president doesn't have the same feelings about American exceptionalism that we do. And I think over the last 3 or 4 years, some people around the world have begun to question that. On this Tuesday, we have an opportunity, you have an opportunity to vote, to take the next step in bringing back that special nature of being American, to not turn us into a government-dominated society like we've seen other nations pursue, but instead to restore to this country the principles that made this nation the greatest nation in the history of the earth, to restore our commitment to life and to liberty and to the pursuit of happiness. I represent someone who believes in those founding principles. The president says he wants to transform America. I don't want to transform America. I want to restore to America the principles that made us the hope of the earth. And together we're going to do that on Tuesday and every day thereafter till we get back to the White House. Thanks, you guys. Thank you.